Hey everyone, welcome to the Keith Craft Podcast. This is Josh, and I'm sitting here. If you're watching on video, there's three of us today.
Yes.
Because we've got a great friend of ours, Dr. Robbie Sonderegger, from, I call him a citizen of the world. He's from all over the world.
Yes.
He's got 3 different passports. He's an incredible man of God, but also he is a professional family psychologist. You've studied
psychologist.
You've studied families and helped families for over 20 years in Australia and Switzerland, and you have a PhD in psychology. So you are very smart, smarter than me and my dad combined sitting on this podcast. And Dr. Robbie also travels all over the world and does trauma rehabilitation with people that are experiencing hardships related to war, refugees, places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan, Ukraine, any place that you can probably see in the world where there's been massive trauma that's taken place, or there's a war-torn area. Dr. Robbie's gone there and he's done some kind of trauma rehabilitation there.
Some people run from the fire and some people run into the fire. He's one of those people that runs into the fire.
And so he's a great friend of ours. He's spoken at our church quite a few times, and he's in town with us as just God's gift to us just to get to be here. Yeah. And so we're glad that you're here, Dr. Robbie. Thanks for being here. Did I miss anything on the intro? I don't know if I missed anything.
Seriously, just talk a little bit about yourself, because I'm asking you to, and what it is that you do. Josh gave a synopsis, but clinical psychologist, and which is going to relate to our subject today, which I'll go ahead and say. When I asked Dr. Robbie, what do you want to talk about? He said, let's talk about mental wealth. And I said, how about mental wealthness? So we are coining a word, wealthness.
Because you can have wellness or you can have wealthness.
And you can have wealth and have wellness
at the same
time. And those two words.
I didn't know what that meant, because I didn't know why we had ness on the end of wealth.
That's why.
But
now you know how obvious was that.
I asked you about it before, and you're like, "I'll explain it."
I did,
but I just got it while you were saying it.
You just got it. So it's wellness and wealth together is wealthness.
That's so great.
Because there's a lot of people that have wealth, Dr. Robbie, but they're not well. And there's a lot of people that are well, but they don't have wealth. But what if you could have wealthness? You could have both. That's what this podcast is all about. So we're going to do part 1. We're going to do part 2. But before we get to the 7 pillars of wealthness, talk about a little bit about what it is that you do, how long you've done it.
Well, let me just start by saying it's always a great honor and privilege to be on the Keith Craft podcast, and so great to be back and talking about a really important topic that many people, especially post-COVID, are still wrestling with, even though COVID almost seems like a lifetime ago now. There are still
the flu has come
fallout.
Roaring back.
Amazing, interesting.
Went away, back now.
But look, at the end of the day, I am father to my 5 beautiful children. I've had the honor and privilege of being married to my wife for 23 years. And look, I look forward to, exploring how I can be a better man of God in every scenario of my life. I am a student of life. So rather than calling me smart, no, I'm just a student. I'm just learning. And I'm excited to talk about this important topic today, because I think many people misunderstand it.
Yeah. Well, you never lose when you learn, and when you learn, you can earn. So if you kind of get both ends of that, it's like, wow, you never lose if you learn, and if you learn, you'll always be able to earn. And what you'll be able to earn is whatever you learn, it not only adds value to you, but it empowers you to add value to the lives of others. And that's why I say that way. But your credentials, you're a clinical psychologist, and what kind of work do you do specifically?
So for the last 20 years, we've worked in, natural disaster areas, war zones, there were survivors of human trafficking around the world in troubled hotspots, helping people to not just recover from the great travesties or the torture and trauma that they've been through, but learning how to capitalize on it, use it as a springboard to be catapulted out of a person's crisis and into their calling, so that we can, in the end up better off than what we were before the tragedy took place. In other other words, let's not just recover, let's grow through this tragedy. And research shows that we're able to do that. And so we've tapped into that research, and we're teaching people around the world how to develop the necessary core character strengths, the right mindset, the kingdom mindset, to be able to facilitate growth despite what might be happening around them.
It's so
and
powerful.
You've done this on every continent except South America and Antarctica.
Well, no, South America, we can scratch that off the list. It's only the penguins in Antarctica that remain.
Yeah, because we heard him say recently South America. I think he said
got a
South
trip
Africa.
booked.
Yeah,
So it's going to happen.
So that's exciting. Well, you know, one of the leadershipologies I wrote for myself that I hope helps other people is when you grow through what you go through, you create breakthrough. And you have the power to create breakthrough if you won't just go through stuff, but if you'll grow through what you go through. And so philosophically, that's even why I wanted to have you on our podcast, because I think that's what you help people to do. Like what you said, turn your crisis into a calling. I mean, that's beautiful. Be able to say, okay, this is a crisis, but now, wow, I've just stepped into my calling. And sometimes the crisis is what reveals that. You know?
So you also, I think what's great is that you also come from a biblical worldview. You know, it's not just, you know, on the psychiatric side, you have medicine and all kinds of stuff that there's stuff attached to that. And then psychologically, there's all these different schools of thought, and you bring a biblical worldview into these really not just clinical settings, but just helping people process. And so when you think about mental wealth, mental wellness, I mean, when I think about it, I think about how in culture, really more than ever over the past few years, it's just mental health has become kind of a primary conversation. I mean, we have people that now they on staff at their work, they take mental health days. They're thinking more about their mental health than ever, and there's a lot of different schools of thought related to that. But when we're talking about mental wellness, where should we start? You know, when we're assessing that, when we're looking at that for ourselves, what's the best place for us to start?
Well, the Bible is one big mental health book, but we don't really give it credit. You know, it's all teaching us how to renew our mind and transform our lives. But, you know, when you just said before, people take mental health days off of work, are they really taking a mental health day, or are they taking a mental illness day? Because at the end of the day, if you go out onto the street and you ask the average person, you know, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of mental health? The most common answer will be anxiety, followed closely by depression, followed closely by addiction. So they're listing pathologies, illness in other words. But if you ask that same question about physical health, hey, what's the first thing you think of when you hear the term physical health? People don't say global pandemic, you know, they say energy, vibrancy.
They don't say heart attack, cancer.
No,
we don't describe the physical problems they have.
We don't list illness, do we?
No. So like that's such a great thought, because what you're saying is like when people typically, we've been conditioned by culture or whatever to think now that when we talk about mental health, we're really only describing various mental illnesses that we may or may not possess, right?
And that's why we had to shift words a little bit for this podcast. And let's talk about mental wealth or wealthness, so as to make us stand up and take note and say, hang on, the definition of health is not the absence of illness any more than the definition of wealth is simply the absence of debt. No, if you have no debt, you're broke. You're at zero.
You're just at zero, yeah.
That's at zero. So what does health and wealth really look like?
That's such a powerful thought.
Yeah, it is. And I think, I don't know, there's such a stigma is the reason. Like you say, why when you talk about mental health, why does it go that direction? Why does it go towards depression, anxiety? Why does it go towards panic attacks? Why does it go towards that way? Well, I think because it's been stigmatized. I mean, even, and again, we're not just going down this road on this podcast, but even with what's happening in our world with this inclusivity thought process of somebody having truly what is gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. And so the real thing is that you don't look at somebody that's struggling with cancer or struggling with something and despise them for that. You look at somebody and your heart goes out to that, but it still doesn't mean that this person should not take proactive measures to deal with their physical illness or their mental illness?
Yeah, that's right. And it's a great question too, because when you look at mental health professionals, we don't actually advance mental health per se. What we do is we fix problems. And so when somebody comes along with an illness, it's as though they have been knocked back into minus, and our role is to help restore them to their original position of neutral or zero. But very rarely do we take them beyond zero into plus, helping them to grow, not just to go from deficit back to neutral, but to actually go and grow into plus. We don't do that as mental health professionals. There's no funding available for advancing. That's why we need people like you in the world to actually take us to the next level in our thinking.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about it. So let's kind of just start with the first pillar, and I'll just kind of pitch the ball to you. So what is the first pillar of what we're calling mental wealthness?
Well, there are 7 pillars that can create a solid foundation to really help us thrive and flourish in our lives. And in no particular order, let's start with food and mood. Okay. There is a strong relationship between what we eat and how we feel emotionally. And the truth of the matter is that everything that we put in our mouth.
My favorite relationship, I guess, is an emotional relationship.
That would be his favorite pillar.
Yeah, we've always said in our family we're celebratory eaters.
Yes.
Not celebratory, but celebratory. Just to clarify that. Yeah, and I think that your emotional, excitement probably comes even before you've put the thing in your mouth,
just
right?
Just
like right now, driving to the place, I'm going there.
Thinking about what I'm about to do
which is why he weighs 275 pounds.
Oh, that's kind.
You have to feed the beast.
That's true. That's why.
That's why.
I weigh that because
exactly.
I think you got it in reverse. It's like because of the emotional feeling that I feel when I eat food, that's why I weigh 275. I don't weigh 275. I don't because I weigh 275.
It's all about perspective, son. I was being very positive.
Yes. Anyway.
Another word.
But I do,
proactively
you're welcome,
positive.
everyone. Now you know how much I weigh.
Yes.
On the podcast.
Yeah, and he looks good. In fact, to be honest, Josh, you look the best I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Look
Yes,
going
good
from
coaching.
you
strength to
do
strength.
look best.
So anyway, back to what you were
Well, the
saying.
truth of the matter is
Back to food and mood.
anything you put in your mouth is medicine, and you are either medicating your brain up or you're medicating your brain down. And we go just like any other, drug addict. We've got uppers and downers that we're, oscillating between. And so we have to understand the nature of things like sugar. Just take an example, that glucose it's your brain's favorite food, because your brain that only weighs 2% of your body's entire weight consumes 20% of your body's entire energy. So 1/5 of your body's energy is going to your brain. And so when your brain sees glucose, it's like, yes, I need fuel to help you function. Yep. And so it rips open the glucose molecule, sucks it out, and it leaves behind an expended electron. It's like a carcass lying around on the field of, the tundra of Africa after the lions have devoured whatever they've, taken down. But this substance is the most poisonous substance known to man. And so if we don't take care, we will end up having like a rubbish waste dump in our brain, a toxic mess because of what we are putting into our mouth, and that does not bode well for your mental health and emotional well-being.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that how prevalent that type 2 diabetes is. That's totally driven from food. It's driven by food, and that's one of the even on my own health journey. One of the shifts I've made recently is because my A1C numbers are pre-diabetic. Like somebody would look at me and think, "You're pre-diabetic?" Well, according to my A1C numbers, I am. So what am I doing? Well, your liver, I won't just go do a deep dive on this, but your liver basically produces enough glucose for you for the day and the energy that you'll need throughout your day. Anything on top of that becomes toxic. Why is that? Why when your blood sugar level goes up, is it such a problem?
Well, we've got different types of sugar. I think that's what people don't understand. There's sucrose and fructose and glucose, and look, glucose it's okay, as is fructose. Eat a piece of fruit, you're getting some sugar, it's good. But in America, y'all have this high fructose corn syrup.
Oh yeah.
In everything.
And it's
It's in everything.
Yeah. And the danger is that we don't actually process it in the same way that we process other sugars. In fact, you can't process it. It spills immediately into your bloodstream. So your insulin levels just go off the Richter scale, and we're struggling to cope here. The reason why I think it's such a great issue is because we went into a phase of fat free. Everything became 93% fat free, which, by the way, still means it's like 7% fat. But if you take the fat out of food, you remove the flavor, and so we had to compensate with what? Sugar. And so it's 93% fat free. It's 93% fat yet to be, because when you are unable to process that sugar that spills into your bloodstream, well, it turns itself into fat. And fat, especially when we're stressed, it's also a same deal. We release a stress hormone called glucocorticoids, coming from the word glucose. So this stress hormone gives us the sugar energy hit that we need to survive. But if our stress is just mental, and we're not actually physically burning it up, well, then it goes to the edges of our muscles. It turns itself once again into fat, and this fat acts like poison. It evaporates from our brain important neurochemicals like norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin. These are important for our well-being. If you don't have these well-being chemicals, you cannot be very well. But the good news is, pillar number 2 is movement. And so when you start to move and you exercise and you breathe, as you breathe in that oxygen and the blood vessels dilate, well, it does two things. One, the endorphins gobble up the cortisol, the glucocorticoids, and the oxygen also gobbles up the expended electrons, the carcasses left behind from the glucose, and expels it from the body in the form of carbon dioxide. Somebody tell me that our bodies weren't designed. Seriously.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing you've always said, you've always talked about. I mean, me and Dr. Robert are actually talking about that this week, that you're the most consistent person I feel like physically I've ever known. Like, you've worked out pretty much. I don't know if you've ever really had a week where you didn't work out since you were 15 years old.
Yeah, I can't remember.
You're always doing some kind of physical activity. It doesn't mean you're always lifting weights or you're always doing cardio, but you're always doing something. And that was with you being on the road for 40 plus weeks a year. That was with you traveling all over the world. I mean, you were always gonna do that. And
on vacations with y'all when you didn't.
And on vacations with us. I mean, that's helped me because that helps me now go on vacation. But I think that one of the things that you've always talked to me about is that you can, when you have consistency in that area of your life, it doesn't just, and it's true like what you're saying, Dr. Robbie, it doesn't just make you healthier physically, it makes you healthier mentally, emotionally, all those other things. But then also when you had your heart attack a few years ago, kind of the assessment of the doctors, is that you don't have any long-term heart damage, you don't have any long-term physical effects of the heart attack, minus having stents in your heart. I mean, that's kind of a physical effect I guess, but you still work out, you're still living the same quality of life you were living before. And they attested a lot of that to you having this kind of long-term physical foundation that you built, that when a crisis came to you physically, that your body was able to process it effectively and it didn't just damage you for life. And we've known people that have gone through, less stressing events on their heart and in their life, but because they didn't have any kind of physical foundation and they weren't doing preventative maintenance, the crisis was massively exacerbated.
Well, thank you, first of all, son, for acknowledging that. But, and I give honor to God for that too, but there is a real thing, because every pillar we're talking about is going to require the certainty of discipline. The certainty of discipline outweighs the uncertainty of the uncontrollables.
And that would be the third pillar. We're talking mindset and manners.
Yeah.
When somebody goes on a diet to lose weight, we think, oh, it's the calorie counting, it's the exercise regime. No, it's the mindset. If you don't focus on the mindset, you will not go the distance, because we've got these different stages of readiness for change. Pre-contemplation, I don't need to change, and then contemplation, okay, maybe I should do something about it, and then preparation, okay, I'm really going to do something about it. I'm going to sign up for that gym membership. I'm going to get the new spandex pants and the new shoes, and then I actually engage change, which is the next stage. But if we don't prepare in our mind for the obstacles, the setbacks that will come along the way, we will not maintain the change.
Yeah.
And so mindset and manners is all part of the first 3 pillars.
Well, one of the, again, leadershipologies that I wrote for myself was your mind sets in your thinking. And the way that I say it is the way that you think determines your mindset. And so people, they don't think enough through this. It's like, what?
The way that you think determines what your mind sets in.
Right.
And that's what your mindset is. And so many people, like you're saying, I think they go, well, it doesn't really matter. I just think how I think.
Yeah.
But that determines their mindset about everything in life.
Yeah. It's like when you look at the subject matter, okay, mental wealthness. It's like, how do I have wealth and how do I have wellness? How do I have wellness and wealth? Well, that's what wealthness is. That's what we're coining that wealthness. Like mental wealthness is when you say, okay, food and mood. So what you're saying with the first pillar is your food determines your mood, right?
Largely, you're medicating yourself up or medicating yourself down.
I
plan
think
accordingly.
that it can, right? Because like for me, I think in our family, we're kind of all this way. We're celebratory eaters. I think the first thing for me is like if I have a really great, like if I'm winning a lot in the day, if I have like a really great day, I'm like, man, I'm going to just do something fun. I'm going to take my kids to Chili's. That's like Charlie's favorite restaurant right now. Or if I have a day where I'm like just absolutely just going for it, like kind of stressed, it's like a lot in a day, I'm like, man, I'm going to go just eat wild tonight.
You know what? the question could be asked from a philosophical standpoint, from a thought perspective standpoint, is what is it that makes you happy? Yeah. What is it that makes you happy? And unfortunately, that's what happens with people. Like a lot of times when they're dealing with something difficult, they'll have their favorite food or their favorite dessert, or they'll go to at night after a hard day, just go to the refrigerator, like lose all sense because, I'm doing this because it makes me happy. And that becomes the driving force rather than a philosophy of I want to be mentally well.
Yeah.
I want to have mental wealth in my life. So I think for me, it really is. It's the food deal. It's a very difficult thing for me. When I just think mentally, I go like the worst part of me even having to deal with something physical. I've always thought this. I've always thought as long as I exercise, I can eat what I want. And again, that's a thought process, right? That my mind sets in. So I think I can have my Mexican food. I can have my queso. I can have my chips. I can have my hot dogs. I love hot dogs. I can have my hamburgers. And so in my mind, though, because of my discipline, I go, I'll only have one hamburger a week. I'll only have Mexican food one time a week. I'll only drink Coke Cherry Zero when I eat hamburgers and when I eat Mexican food. I'm just saying in my mind, this is how I process. So I'm not just going to sit around and drink a Coke. I'm not going to sit around and, but it's like you have these routines that you develop in your life that you're not necessarily thinking about, your wealthness. You're just thinking about what you like.
Because I think if you think about what Dr. Robbie said too, it's like, because the default thinking is just how do I stay at zero? So as long as I don't go into negative, I'm okay. Because what you're saying, I feel like represents what a thought process that I've had too. Is like, okay, I work out really hard. Like today, I worked out, I did legs. Yeah. So it's like a lot, right? So
it's almost like you want to reward yourself.
So you want to reward that.
That's the mood part, right?
But then you're not living in the wealth, which is the plus column. You're just going, okay, at least I'm maintaining at zero.
Yeah. I think that's my biggest frustration, Dr. Robbie. One of my biggest frustrations in my life. If I sit down and eat a hamburger And I know we're going back to pillar one because because it's a big deal for
kind of the
everybody.
big one
No,
for-
it's a big
yeah,
deal for
for
everybody.
most
And
of us.
there's a great lack of knowledge. Like I said, fat free or loaded with sugar. It's like,
Or you have like the keto, a lot of people they'll eat keto now, but they eat just absolute garbage. And as long as it's quote unquote low carb,
Yeah, it's
they're doing
keto,
okay. But
yeah.
they're eating bacon all day.
They're killing
and
themselves.
cheese. Yeah, it's just they're messing up their whole cardiovascular system because at least they're in ketosis, so to speak.
So would you say, I'm going to come back to what I was saying a minute ago, but would you say, I know you said they're not in any particular order, but one pillar affects another pillar.
Yeah, they all affect.
So
they
just
all
talk
affect each
about
other.
the first three, because we're emphasizing on this podcast the first three, and then we're going to do the next four in part two of this. But how does food and mood affect the next one we talked about?
Movement. Yeah,
Movement
and play.
And play. And then how does movement and play affect?
Or is underpinned by mindset and manners. So the
So
behavioral.
talk about that a
affect.
little bit.
So there's 1,001 theories or flavors, you could say, of different, which diet is best, what you should eat, and should we go with a classic pyramid, or is that outdated and archaic? And look, at the end of the day, just think fat and sugar. It's a great starting point. And when you understand, okay, so when the fat is removed, it has to be compensated because we're removing the flavor as well. And so if I'm getting a sugar hit, well, I'm actually getting a dopamine hit in my brain. So my brain will start to develop a dependence on this. I want more of it.
That's where cravings come from, right?
Exactly. We've got the craving for not for the food, but for the hit of the chemical in our brain that is a result of eating that particular food. But it all depends on what do you want to achieve? Because if I'm going to eat trans and hydrogenated fats, well, that blocks my brain's receptors from communicating effectively. And if I have attention difficulties in the first place, well, that's going to be a disaster for me. And so what am I doing? What am I doing today? And so let me fuel my brain accordingly. Let me be proactive. So if I'm speaking somewhere, I want to eat food that's going to help my brain be switched on because I want to remember what I'm actually talking about and not be, oh, no, what was that thing that I was going to say? So if I have eaten something that needs to now be dealt with, then I need to go and expend it. I need to go and deal with it. And it's a little bit like when people say, I just don't have any energy. Well, you go to the doctor will say, expend more energy because the more you expend, the more you create. But the good news is that when we're expending that energy, we're also creating endorphins. Endorphins are happy little chemicals that swim around in our bloodstream. I think of them as like dolphins. In fact, you must be like the dolphin king. They call you the gorilla, but dolphin's the second one because, dolphins, you've never seen a depressed dolphin.
He's the gorilla dolphin.
The gorilla dolphin.
He's the ocean gorilla.
But they're always like, they're always happy. And so if you've got endorphins flowing in your bloodstream, it is hard to feel bad when you feel so good. But the discipline that's required to actually put your gym shoes on and get out of the house, that's the hard bit. That's the blockage. Because I had every intention. I set the alarm for 6 a.m., but then it went off and I thought to myself, well, I didn't get to bed till late and I had a hard night and I've got a busy day today. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I just have a rest day. I have it. And we justify in our mind as to why we're not going to do. We have to have the right predetermined mindset and the manners or the discipline required to take action in order to fulfill what we need to do.
Yeah, I think that was like when I've worked out in my life a lot, but I haven't ever really been fully consistent for a long period of time. So I'd have a couple years where I would just be really serious and I'd be like, take a year off. And then, or I would do the same with my diet. And when COVID happened, COVID was really great to me. I just sat at home and ate, didn't really work out. I enjoyed that gyms were closed.
It was great for
me. Me and Courtney moved. It was like, I felt like I was living on vacation. And I had so many weeks during the COVID stuff where I would just go to sleep whenever I wanted. I'd wake up wherever I wanted. I had no really rhythm or routine. And I felt great about that. Like everything else didn't feel great. And whenever I came into 2022, I got really serious. It's like this is like a horse that needs to come into the barn for me. I'm disciplined in so many other areas of my life. This is like a thing for me that is preventing me from winning, I think, overall in life. And I wear a Whoop, which is like a fitness tracker. And I could show you that for the months in 2022, like what you're saying is so true. In 2022, January and February, on my body was absolutely stressed. It was just freaking out. It measures your recovery in like red, yellow, or green. All my recoveries every day were red. I was waking up early, like so exhausted, so tired. And in my mind, I was like, I'm committing to this process. Well, now that's a year later, or even a few months later, it was a total, then it was like, oh, well, this is just, now my body's established like this new homeostasis where now my body's in a rhythm that's healthier because what I felt with that, and I changed my diet at the same time. And so it was just, we're not getting anything that we want. Then I was waking up so exhausted, on and on I could go. My workouts were awful. I was sore all the time. I was like, my body was feeling like I was torturing it. But now it's kind of like this internal craving thing of like, I need to eat this. I need to work out this way because I feel better when I do that.
Yeah.
So if I eat bad, like we ate pretty bad last night. We all ate Mexican food together.
That was good for me.
So I ate bad last night. I woke up this morning, I had to work out. My workout wasn't as good. I didn't sleep very well. You know, I was pretty tired during my workout. I was pretty tired when I woke up. But then right, because I have all of the experience of eating healthier and then going to work out, I know that if I eat healthy tonight, which I probably won't, it's me and Courtney's date night, but if I eat healthy tonight, I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll have a lot more energy.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's food. Food has to be fuel. That's what we don't see it as. Yeah. We see it as something we enjoy, especially when you're a celebratory eater. But what I was going to say, and then I want you to say what you're going to say right there, is that my frustration is that when I discovered that no amount of working out can fix a bad diet. I'm just telling you, I'm a reasonably knowledgeable individual when it comes to, just life in general, right? I mean, I'm not a master of everything at 63, but I have some mastery. And this is recent revelation that, in other words, no amount of working out can fix a bad diet. So what were you going to say?
There's a couple of different things on this, and there's a bit of a curveball in there as well. I love just listening to you because basically you're both describing the immediate pleasure that comes from doing something, and then there's a long-term consequence. Yeah. Or if I plan well now, like whatever I choose, so I don't get what I want in life, I get what I plan for, and I only plan for that which I believe I can actually, fulfill, and so therefore I have to choose it.
Pause there for a minute, because I say it different, but it's both as good. You don't get in life what you deserve, you get what you plan for. What I say is you don't get in life what you deserve, you get in life what you decide. And so those both go together. So I decide I don't get what I deserve. I get what I decide. Well, what do I decide? Once I've decided, I've got to have a plan. So I wanted to pause you for that because that's
great.
Very profound.
Great. So desire as well as decide. Look, there's a spin here, and it might freak everyone out who's listening here. There's a research study that was done not so long ago where they took a group of individuals and said, we'd like to give you a couple of different milkshakes to try. Some participants received one milkshake first and the other milkshake first. So let me describe the first milkshake. This was the milkshake that was super healthy, like organically grown, vine ripened, fruit with, Jersey milk, non-homogenized, raw milk. Like, in other words, super healthy. It might not taste very good, but you can drink it with a good conscience.
Yeah.
The second type of milkshake was, as you might describe, it's the kind of milkshake designed to make your tongue lick your brain.
Our preferred milkshake, yes.
Tongue slap your brains.
Tongue slap your brains out, yeah.
In other words, full up with all of the artificial sweeteners and colorers, but man, it tastes good. Now, it might not be very healthy for you, but you're going to love it as you drink it. So everyone got to experience both types of milkshakes. Once again, randomly, one group won first and the other group the others. So the researchers took some blood samples and measured the ghrelin levels in each participant. So ghrelin is a hormone that is secreted in correspondence with the amount of calories that you might consume. And so you would expect if you're consuming high calories, you would have, a corresponding rate of ghrelin. And indeed, that's what they found. And so they reported, to everyone, here are the results that when you drank, particular milkshake, this was the outcome. But then when they drank the healthy milkshake, they had a completely different response in ghrelin levels. And so everyone's like, okay, so this is just what we expected. Except that's when the researchers confessed both milkshakes were exactly the same.
Wow.
It's the way in which you think about what you are eating or what you are doing that has a biological effect. And the same is true with stress. If you think stress is bad, stress is bad. If you think stress is good, stress is good. So is it going to destroy your life? Is it going to cause mental illness, relationship breakdown? Possibly. What about physical degenerative disease? Possibly. But if stress is good, no, I'm going to harness stress to my advantage. It's like wind out on the high seas. If I've got no wind, I'm just bobbing up and down. Now, of course, if there's too much stress, I might need to batten down the hatch and ride out the storm. And now, once again, I'm not going anywhere. But with just the right amount of stress, it's going to pick up the skirt of the sails and take me places where I never would have dreamed of. And so, once again, what do you believe? What you believe is also equally as important as what you do.
It's very, very powerful. And that's what, I don't know if you have much knowledge in this area. I'm not going to assume that you do. But the reticular activating system.
Yeah.
Just because
The RAS.
when I think about food or I think about behavior, which that's what we're talking about, but as it relates to other things as well. But the reticular activating system, much like epigenetics, in other words, people think, well, these are my genes. I've got the fat gene. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm fat because I got the fat gene.
Well, or now it's really not even that. It's just that you're being fat doesn't mean you're unhealthy. Is kind of the modern. It doesn't even have to do with genetics now.
Well,
it's
just walk in Target.
Fat acceptance.
Target is a store
So
here.
just for the people who don't know what the reticular activating system
yeah,
is.
that's
it's
what
just a part of our brain that
it's right at the base of your skull.
Yeah.
But anyway, walk into Target now, and the models that it's all inclusivity now. So the models, normally you'd have models, they're all overweight. They're all, it's like, I'm looking, I walked through there, I told Sheila, I go, I don't know. I don't need to see that. It's like, well, here was her sweet response. Most people look like that.
Yeah, we live in a country where 69% of Americans are considered overweight.
But a model, when I think about the word model, I don't think about a pretty person. I think about,
the
I would like to
representation.
look, anyway, so go ahead, reticular activating system, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the RAS is simply the part of your brain that
How
helps
does it
you
affect?
recognize. So you see things. So the classic example that's often used is if you buy a new car, you all of a sudden see that same car everywhere around. You probably saw them before, but you didn't recognize that car. And so
Right.
when you engage in a particular thing, the RAS, or the reticular activating system, helps reinforce. And so when it comes to a belief system, it can also reinforce a belief. Or even if it's a false or a faulty belief, we see evidence for our belief system, and it confirms because it's being brought to my attention.
And how does
I'm
it
reminded
work? So
again.
it's at the base of your brain. So does it work by, again, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you decide. Does it work at the decision level?
It can. It has an influence on the decision level, but
Okay.
we need to take a step back and ask the question, what is it that I am planning for? Am I planning for my presentation? So therefore I'm going to put good food in my body so that my brain is switched on. Or like you said last night, which I marveled at, you gave an illustration. Maybe just share that illustration with you and your beautiful wife, Sheila, where she was frustrated because the kids are going to go into the store and they're going to ask for every willy-nilly, toy or sweet, or, Mom, can I have this? Can I have this? And so she was telling the kids, don't ask for what you want. And then you said something completely different. What was that and why?
Yeah, I said to her, I'm going to ask. Now, she remembers it differently because she was wired up. But what I said is, I'm going to ask. I pulled her aside. I said, I'm going to ask that you never tell our children that. And I said, the reason I'm going to ask that you never tell them not to ask for something is because what happens is that gets in people's mindsets that, well, I'm not going to ask for that because I shouldn't ask for that. And anyway, even if I ask for that, I probably won't get it, so I won't even ask for it. I said, I don't want to raise children like that. I want them to be able to be free to ask. And then, so what the rest of the story that I didn't share was that she said, okay, well, I was just, she was explaining. I said, I get it. I said, but listen, especially when I'm with you, I'll walk them through it. So we got back in the car and I said, okay, now I wanted to talk to y'all about something. I said, because mommy told you that she was going to the store and she didn't want you to ask. I want you to know you can always ask. And they literally went, really? I go, yeah. I said, but there's going to be three things. It's going to be, yes, you can have that. No, you can't have that. Or, you remember the third thing, Josh? If it's not no and if it's not yes.
It's is this negotiable?
Is this negotiable? I said, let's teach our
But
children.
the first thing you said,
Yep.
but I remember the conversation because the first thing you said was, before you ask for something, you should ask me and your mom, is your iron hot? That's what you
So
said.
I said, if you want to know the process, this is the way it's.
That's what he did. He walked I remember sitting
I
there having the
walked them through the
conversation.
process of here's how to ask. So ask, first of all, is your iron hot? If we say yes, or if we say no, if we say yes, which I've always said yes, but their mom hasn't. So I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just saying I'm the yes man. So yes, my iron's hot. Okay, can I have this? If I say yes, it's obvious. If I say no, there's still one more option. You can ask, is this negotiable? And that's always going to be yes, for the most part. But once I say, now you've made your case, but it's no, then it's no. And there was no whining about it. I mean, for real. It wasn't like, why can't I have it? It solved it that day as children. I'm just telling you, we never had conversations where, can I have that? Why not?
Yeah, and I would say it taught me from an early age that everything's pretty much negotiable in life. Like, if someone tells me no, that just usually means that we're going to have a negotiation. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen at all.
The reason why this illustration is so profound is because your beautiful wife, Sheila, was thinking about the next 20 minutes, whereas you were thinking about the next 20 years.
Yeah.
This is what we're planning for. Her reticular activating system is, I'm about to walk into a shop. That's stressful. They're going to be asking for things. And so before we even walk in here, I'm triggered to make a decision, a behavioral mindset decision. I am going to ask you children not to ask me for anything. And you're like, no. I want you to be able to ask. I want you to know what you want and be able to go after it in life. And that is amazing. Now, both are right. One's not right and one's not wrong. But it's, what are you planning for? And so the same.
One is short-term thinking,
Exactly.
one's long-term thinking.
Exactly.
I mean, that's it. So the reason a parent would say something like that is because they don't want to have to deal with the conflict of no or yes or what you want. And yet we're in a position where I wanted my kids to know, here's what the Bible says, Psalms 37, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. So I wanted them to have a perspective, a mindset that, and we're talking about all three of these things, that, hey, we can ask, and here's the process in which to ask. So last thing, because I know we're running out of time for this podcast. Last thing, if you could give one thing for each pillar, like just one, like how do they need to think about food and mood? How do they need to think about, anyway, just give one thing for each pillar.
Yeah, plan well. Set your targets. Know your why. And so if you're going to eat a certain thing, why? Because I feel like this in the moment, or do you have a greater why? A why that can supersede the momentary feeling. And, I look at you and I look at you, you're so buff, and both of you are so buff. I feel like I'm in the land of the giants here. But I would ask you, Keith, why are you still working out? You're in your 60s now. You're like, you don't need to work out. You look so fit. But you would say to me, I'm guessing, I'm not working out for now, and I'm not looking for image. What are you working out for?
Yeah.
You're working out for your future.
For as long as potentially I could live, potentially. I'm not working out for now. I'm working out. So everything financially, everything in my life is like that. I'm not thinking now. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say that in all of the research too, it's been shown that the greatest predictor of longevity in your life is muscle mass. It's the
Number one.
the amount of muscle that you have. And so you in your mind, like when we work out, I actually work out harder than him. So I'll go, I got to do some extra sets. Because right now for him, he's not thinking, I'm going to build and I'm going to gain and I'm going to go crazy. He's thinking, my job for the rest of my life is I'm just going to maintain what I have.
So let's reverse or re-engineer these three pillars and go backwards. So if we've got the right mindset, I am not just planning for the here and now. I'm planning long term. This is my goal, and then I'm going to set my mind accordingly to have the discipline, the manners, in other words, to engage the movements that's required, and the play, which we never really talked about, but to laugh a lot and release endorphins and enjoy your life, but also make sure that there's that balance, especially when it comes to what I put in my mouth, because I'm not just going to medicate myself for the here and now and have a good time, which it's okay to do if that's what you're planning for.
Yeah.
But to have that why, which will overcome any what, let's make sure that what we put in our mouth will medicate not just us so that we feel good, but be good for those around us.
Very good. Well, I'll just end by saying this, and then Josh, you can wind us up, but you have one life, and it can be a life by design, or it can be a life by default. And we talk a lot about that. I feel like that you can design the life that you want, but it requires you to be the person that can get what you want. And that's why we're talking about mental wealthness.
Yeah. And we'll come back to play. We're going to do another episode. So we'll come back and talk about having fun and playing. And thank you, Dr. Robbie, for being here and just for helping us and educating us. And you can go to drrobbie.com. He has all kinds of resources.
Encourage you to do that.
And courses that you can follow and things you can be a part of if you want to see the next place he's going to be in the world. That's there too. And then make sure that you share this with somebody if it's helped you. Make sure you go to keithcraft.org and see all the various resources that we have available. We have masterminds and coaching opportunities. And we also have a free newsletter called Leadershipology that we share every week. That's about helping you to think better. We call Pastor Keith the ultimate think coach, and everything, like even Dr. Robbie said, starts with your thinking. So if you can think better, everything in your life can get better. Thank you for listening to the Keith Craft podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.